Chapter 72 Removing Poison. Han Li secretly cursed, but he silently maintained the smile on his face. In order to maintain his image as a medicinal god, he had to act as if he had planned everything in advance. Han Li's calm appearance helped him deceive those who were present, letting them believe that the efficiency of the medicinal pill was within his expectations and making them feel more admiration towards him. Sect leader Ma smiled very cheerfully and lightheartedly, showing a sense of pride as if Han Li was already his subordinate. He was currently the one who was the most likely to gain Han Li's support, and as a result, he laughed as joyously and freely as he did. But not long after, the situation took a drastic change. Not good. Zhang Shuer cried out in fear. The black air on Uncle's face is resurfacing. These words caused everyone to become startled. A few of them gathered impulsively around Elder Li to take a closer look at him. Elder Zhao was among them. Upon hearing Zhang Shuer, Han Li felt his heart pause momentarily, but he did not immediately join the crowd. Instead, he stiffly moved closer to the front of the bed. Lady Li was a meticulous lady with a sharp perception, and she hurriedly called out for two juniors to move away from the bed and make room for medicinal god Han so that he could make a diagnosis. Han Li, seeing that there was a space near the bedside, calmly walked up to carefully investigate the situation. Approximately after the length of time for half a stick of incense to burn, Han Li was positive that the poison had not been completely removed, leaving behind a faint and indistinct black air on Elder Li's face. Having reached the final verdict, Han Li slightly turned his head to glance at Zhang Shuer, thinking that this young lady had made a fuss over nothing. Han Li's gaze contains a bit of disapproval that was discovered by Li Feiyu, who had been constantly staring at Zhang Shuer. He returned Han Li's glance, unwilling to allow Han Li to offend the goddess of his heart. Han Li was speechless. It seemed that once Li Feiyu fell to the snares of love, he would value his beloved over his friends. Han Li returned his composure and continued to scrutinize Elder Li's condition, refusing to be nagged by a simpleton of a man who had been easily swayed by a woman. Aside from the remaining black air on Elder Li's face, the spots of poison on his body, upon reaching the size of a soybean, maintained their size instead of continuing to grow even smaller. Due to the remaining poison in his body, Elder Li still remained unconscious. Seeing the current situation, Han Li knew that he might finally be able to use his backup plan and not have to worry about the lies he told. It was just the right time to demonstrate his own foresight. "Fetch a basin full of clear water," Han Li said with an unquestionable tone. This time, the task did not fall upon Zhang Shuer. Ma Rong rushed out before anyone could respond. Han Li turned around and solemnly said to Elder Qian and sect leader Ma, "Next, I will need two people to help me, using their inner strength to force the poison within Elder Li's body to move towards a few key acupoints. I will then use an acupuncture needle technique to release the blood and detoxify the poison, forcing the poison out of his body. Will you two will be able to handle it?" Sect leader Ma's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but he still agreed. Elder Qian, on the other hand, coldly nodded his head and agreed in a straightforward manner. "Why do you have to specifically use those two people? Am I not qualified to help?" Elder Zhao asked unhappily, believing that Han Li had underestimated him. Han Li silently sighed, knowing that he had to clearly explain to this obstinate man. The mixed circular hand that Elder Zhao practices should be based on external martial art techniques. Thus, regarding the purity of inner strength, I believe that sect leader Ma and Elder Qian are much more suitable. Han Li said in a patient, warm tone. Towards Han Li's tactful reply, Elder Zhao was at a loss for words. Han Li no longer felt any resentment towards this buffoon and spoke to the rest of the people in the room with a commanding tone. "Aside from sect leader Ma and Elder Qian, everyone please step outside for now. The method to remove the poison from Elder Li is not suitable for people to watch. It requires absolute silence, so we must not be disturbed by others." Once Han Li finished speaking, his words made the people in the room feel foolish. Lady Li was the first to understand as she respectfully said a single phrase, I leave my husband in your care." She was the first to discreetly leave the room. With Lady Li as an example, the others, regardless of whether they were willing or not, could only return one by one back to the living room. After Ma Rong brought back a basin of clear water, Han Li immediately hurried him out and tightly closed the door room, leaving a crowd of confused people looking at each other in dismay outside the room. A quarter of an hour passed by, but the door had yet to open. Even though the only obstacle separating the crowd from the interior of the room was a door, not even a single sound was heard from within. This peculiar silence caused the crowd of people, who was waiting for news, to be irritable and restless. A trace of a shadow wordlessly crept into everyone's hearts. Even Lady Li, who initially appeared to be calm, had some hints of restlessness, not to mention the fiery-tempered elder Zhao, who had paced the living room back and forth countless of times. Just when the people in the living room had completely lost all their patience, the room door opened with a gaji sound. The crowd reflexively shifted their gaze for a moment, converging their eyes at the same place. The atmosphere immediately became heavy while containing a bit of anxiety. Han Li calmly walked out. His weariness was evident on his face, but when he saw the crowd of people and their intense stares, he revealed a small smile. "Everything's fine now. The remainder of the poison has been completely removed, and after a good night's rest, Elder Li will regain consciousness sometime tomorrow." Han Li said these words with great confidence. In reality, he himself did not think that the removal of the poison would proceed so smoothly with not even the slightest complication. After hearing these words, Lady Li and the others revealed a smile one by one, their originally depressing attitudes completely swept away. Several impulsive people wanted to barge in and take a look, but Han Li stretched out a hand and stopped them all. Elder Li's body is currently very weak, and it is best that avoid too many people or loud noises to expedite the expulsion of the poison. Sect leader Ma and Elder Chen have expended a great deal of inner strength, and are currently readjusting their breathing. I think that the less people enter, the better. The best case scenario would be if Lady Li were the only one who could enter, Han Li told Lady Li solemnly. After hearing these news, Lady Li could not possibly have any other thought. She swiftly nodded her head and could not help but express her thanks to Han Li. She soon rushed into the room by herself in order to see her husband with her own eyes.